Starting webinar.
Good afternoon. Just a note to all of you that we will begin our public scoping meeting just around the 2 o'clock hour. Thank you, and we will see you soon. Good afternoon and welcome. You are tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment Proposal, seeker number 21 DCP 111Y. My name is Olga Abinator, and I'm the Director of the New York City Department of City Planning, Environmental Assessment and Review Division, or EARD for short. Stephanie Chaloux, Deputy Director of EARD, will co-host today's meeting with me. And in the event of any technical challenges on my end, Stephanie will take over this meeting on my behalf. We truly appreciate your patience as we adjust to this remote public meeting format and its challenges. I do want to take the time to thank everyone for coming out today to attend this virtual meeting. I do also want to acknowledge that technology, such as what we're using today, is imperfect. However, it is an invaluable tool that allows the critical land use and environmental review processes to proceed while keeping all of us safe during this public health crisis. I also want to emphasize that we will hear from everyone who wishes to speak today, and this meeting will remain open until we have heard from all speakers. We also welcome written comments and testimony through Monday, February 1st, 2021, and provide written comments the same attention and consideration as comments provided verbally at today's meeting. Next slide, please. We will now proceed to the public scoping meeting for the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment. For the record, let me note that the City Environmental Quality Review, or seeker application number, once again, is 21 DCP 111Y. Today's date is January 22nd, 2021, and the time is approximately 2:02 p.m. Next slide, please. Again, I'm Olga Abinator, the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division of the Department of City Planning. I'll be chairing today's public scoping meeting. The Department of City Planning is acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as the lead agency for this proposal's environmental review. As lead agency, the department is overseeing the preparation and completion of an environmental impact statement, or EIS, for the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment proposal. Next slide. Joining me are several of my colleagues from the Department of City Planning. Again, Stephanie Chalou, Deputy Director of EARD at the department, is joining us today. Jennifer Gravel, the Director of the department's Housing and Economic Development Division, and Barry Dinnerstein, Deputy Director of the Housing and Economic Development Division, are with us today. Diane McCarthy, Senior Team Leader of EARD, Rachel Antelmi, Associate Project Manager in EARD, are with us today as well. And we're also joined by Alexander Plakis from HED and Susan Amron, our General Counsel. Next slide. Together, we are here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS, for the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment proposal. The draft scope of work identifies all of the subjects that will be analyzed in the upcoming DEIS and explains how the subjects will be studied. I'll note that digital copies of the draft scope of work are available on the Department of City Planning website. Next slide. The purpose of today's public scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the draft environmental impact statement at the earliest stage possible. Toward that end, the department will have an opportunity today to receive comments on the draft scope of work from elected officials, government agencies, and leaders from community boards, as well as members of the general public. Again, we also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work, and they can be submitted through Monday, February 1st, 2021. Throughout the course of this presentation, I'll provide instructions on how written comments may be submitted. Next slide. At the end of the written comment period, or the public comment period, the department as lead agency will review all comments, those we hear today, as well as all written comments that we have received. After carefully reviewing all comments, the department will decide what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work, and a final scope of work will be issued. It is the final scope of work that will serve as the basis for preparing the draft environmental impact statement. Next slide. Today's scoping meeting marks the formal beginning of the environmental review process for the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment proposal. I'll note that no decisions will be made today regarding the environmental review draft scope of work. The purpose of today's meeting is to allow the public to provide comments on the draft scope of work and to allow the department to listen to those comments. It's important to us that all voices be heard today. Next slide. I will now focus on the structure of today's meeting, which is going to be divided into 3 separate parts. During the first part of today's meeting, Alexander Plakis of the department's Housing and Economic Development Division will give a brief overview describing the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment proposal. Allison Ruddock, a representative of VHV, the environmental consulting firm for this proposal, will then provide a short summary of the environmental review and the draft scope of work. During the second part of today's meeting, we will be receiving comments on the draft scope of work from elected officials, leaders from government agencies, and leaders from community boards. During the third and final part of today's meeting, the department will receive comments verbally from the general public. Today's meeting will end only when everyone who has signed up to provide testimony has had a chance to be heard. Next slide. On to a few logistics for today's scoping meeting. Our protocol, again, is intended to ensure that everyone has a chance to speak and that all voices are heard. If you wish to speak and plan to access today's meeting online using a computer, a tablet, or a smartphone, please remember to register online through the City Planning Scoping Meeting for the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment page of the NYC Engage portal at www.nyc.gov/NYC-ENGAGE. A link to join us and to provide your testimony, if you wish to do so, will be emailed to you after you have completed the registration process on the NYC Engage portal. We will add you to our speakers list following your registration. Next slide. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be granted temporary speaking privileges by Department of City Planning staff. So please listen closely for your name to be called. Once your name has been called, we will help unmute your microphone and you will be asked to convey your remarks. To allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, we ask that you please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. A 3-minute countdown clock will run on the screen if you are participating online, and at the 3-minute mark, your time will expire. At that time, you will be asked to conclude your remarks. Please also note that your testimony will be verbal only. We will be able to hear you, but we will not be able to see you. Next slide. An additional note of instruction for those of you joining us by telephone today. If you wish to provide testimony via telephone, please select *9 upon my prompt. Please listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number. At that point, you will be given the temporary ability to share your testimony. You must press *6 to unmute your telephone, and we will be able to hear you speak. When your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, whichever comes first, you must press *6 again to mute yourself. We would like to encourage our telephone participants who wish to provide testimony to register via telephone using the dial-in participant hotline. Please note that muting and unmuting registered speakers may take us a moment as we continue to adjust to this new meeting format. Next slide. On to time limits. Speakers from the general public, once again, have 3 minutes to provide testimony, but there are a few exceptions to our time limit. Elected officials, community board leaders, and leaders from government agencies are given the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not time limited. To those of you viewing us on live stream and also wishing to testify, please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. Make sure that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony to avoid hearing an echo. Next slide. As a reminder, the written comment period will end on Monday, February 1st, 2021. Comments may be emailed to 21DCP11Y_DL@planning.nyc.gov. If you wish to mail your comments, please address them to the New York City Department of City Planning, Environmental Assessment and Review Division. Attention, Olga Abinator, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, 10271. Next slide. If you missed any of our instructions, please remember to visit www.nyc.gov/NYC Engage for additional information on how to participate and provide testimony. And I'll continue to revisit those instructions throughout our scoping meeting today. We will now move on to the first part of the public scoping meeting, where Alex Plakis of the Department of City Planning will present an overview of the proposed project, followed by a presentation by Allison Ruddock of VHB, who will summarize the environmental review draft scope of work. Alex?
Thank you, Olga. Hello, I'm Alex Plakis, and I work with the Housing and Economic Development Division at the Department of City Planning. And today, I'll be discussing the proposed zoning text amendment for the Citywide Hotel Special Permit. Next slide, please. The new Citywide CPC Special Permit will apply to all new transient hotels in Group 7, includes motels, tourist cabins, and botels. The purpose of the proposed text amendment is to create a consistent zoning framework for new hotels and allow the City Planning Commission to evaluate the hotel use to ensure it does not impair the future use or development of the surrounding area. Next slide, please. By 2019, before the pandemic hit, New York City experienced record growth in the tourism industry and its hotel pipeline for the 10th consecutive year. Visitor trends had peaked in 2019 with almost 67 million visitors, up from 46 million visitors in 2009. There are 705 hotels in New York City with an inventory of 128,000 rooms. Furthermore, sizable growth of hotel room supply has been a prevailing factor in New York City for much of the past decade, not only in Manhattan, but spreading to other boroughs as well. However, as of November 2020, 146 hotels have closed, accounting for over 42,000 rooms as a result of the pandemic. Next slide, please. Regardless of these closures, development of hotels in unexpected areas and an inconsistent zoning framework for commercial hotels have resulted in a need for a citywide hotel text amendment. Since 2007, rapid growth of new hotels has led to 54,000 rooms being built throughout the city, sometimes in unanticipated places, leading the City Planning Commission to adopt a variety of special permits, resulting in an inconsistent framework for regulating hotels. Thus, the proposed text amendment will create a consistent zoning framework for new hotels and allow the City Planning Commission to evaluate each hotel development's impact on the future use and development of the surrounding area. Next slide, please. For instance, over the last 10 to 15 years, hotels have developed in areas that previously saw little hotel development. As a result, there have been unanticipated changes in the use and development of the area, introducing potential conflicts. There are also land use challenges of hotels, although they vary widely depending on neighborhood context. We are already aware of the potential conflicts hotels can have in light manufacturing or M1 districts, as seen on the slides here, which may not only be hazardous, but out of context. Several C districts in the city have also seen hotels develop in areas where it can be in conflict with nearby businesses. Some of these hotels can be improved through a review process. This text amendment is intended to encourage better development and limit potential conflicts. Next slide, please. As stated before, the new citywide City Planning Commission special permit, if adopted, will be applicable to all C, MX, and paired M1R districts, including areas with existing hotel special permit provisions, such as the M1 special permit that was adopted in 2018. The Department of City Planning will evaluate vesting and discontinuance provisions and other provisions to permit projects to move forward and support the city's economic recovery. For all these reasons, the department is proposing a zoning text amendment to establish a City Planning Commission special permit for new hotels citywide. The new special permit would also affect motels, tourist cabins, and botels, but those are much less common in the city. Next slide, please. If this proposal is enacted, every new hotel would have to apply for a special permit, which is a discretionary action subject to public review under ULURP. This includes review by community boards, borough presidents, the City Planning Commission, and the City Council if they choose to review it. Now, I would like to introduce Allison Ruddock from VHB. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Alex. I'm Allison Ruddock with VHB, the lead environmental consulting firm for the Citywide Hotels text amendment, working on behalf of the Department of City Planning. Next slide, please. As noted on this slide, the city's environmental quality review process is a disclosure process by which decision makers evaluate potential environmental consequences of a proposed action before approving or disapproving that action. This evaluation is based on a comparison between the future no action condition, that's if the proposed action is not implemented, and a future with action condition, that's if the proposed action is approved. This framework is detailed in the draft scope of work, and the draft scope of work also outlines the technical areas and methodologies for further study in the Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS. As Olga discussed, comments received today and through the end of the comment period will be incorporated into a final scope of work. And that final scope of work will guide preparation of the draft EIS. The EIS will then be published for public review and comment. Next slide, please. As detailed in the draft scope of work, the proposed action will be analyzed as a generic action, since it's a citywide action that has broad applicability. The EIS will consider an analysis year of 2035, which is based on an assumption that the New York City hotel market will recover to 2019 levels by the year 2025. Then an additional 10-year period is considered, since an analysis year 10 years in the future is generally considered reasonable for generic actions. As noted earlier, consistent with SEEKR, the framework for the EIS will be to analyze the potential increment between the no action and with action conditions, known as the reasonable worst case scenario. This reasonable worst case scenario, which I'll discuss in more detail in the next few slides, is based on a consultant report that examined existing hotel inventory in New York City and the number of hotels in the development pipeline with consideration for the effects of COVID-19. These existing conditions, along with an analysis of demand over time, informed the estimate of the number of hotel rooms that would need to be developed to meet future demand. Next slide, please. The no action condition assumes the New York City hotel market will have fully recovered after COVID-19 by the year 2025, reaching 2019 demand levels. It also assumes that the market will respond to demand increases in the analysis year, 2035, by increasing supply until the market reaches equilibrium. Because of uncertainties related to COVID-19, two market scenarios were identified for the no action condition, with differing assumptions about hotel closures and reopenings to establish a conservative estimate for future hotel supply. Next slide, please. In scenario A, hotel supply assumptions are made under the condition that permanently closed hotels remain closed and temporarily closed hotels reopen. In scenario B, hotel supply assumptions are made under the condition that both permanently closed and temporarily closed hotels remain closed. In both scenarios, all pipeline hotels would be developed. With these supply assumptions, to meet market equilibrium by 2035 in the no action condition, between 1,217 and 32,115 rooms would be developed. Next slide, please. Under the with action condition, the estimated 1,217 to 32,115 hotel rooms to be developed under the no action condition would instead need to seek a special permit prior to construction. Additionally, it's assumed that all hotels that are currently in the pipeline would also need to seek a special permit. With these conservative assumptions, up to 62,466 future hotel rooms may be affected by the proposed action, as new hotel construction would require a special permit. Next slide, please. Based on this framework, the draft scope of work identifies several technical areas for further analysis in the EIS. These analysis areas, which will be assessed consistent with the recently updated Seeker Technical Manual, are as follows: land use zoning and public policy, socioeconomic conditions, neighborhood character. In addition, if any significant adverse impacts are identified, the EIS will include a mitigation chapter that identifies potential measures to mitigate the identified impacts. The EIS will also include an alternatives chapter that examines potential alternatives to the proposed action. And finally, the EIS will include a conceptual analysis to understand how the special permit could be utilized and to generically assess the potential environmental impacts that could result from a hotel development. I'll turn it back now to Olga at City Planning.
Thank you, Allison. We will now move on to part 2 of today's public scoping meeting. I'd like to ask our production team to please project our slide with the instructions on how to participate. Thank you very much. At this time, we will open the floor to receive testimony from elected officials, community board leaders, and officials representing government agencies. I'll note that if speakers experience any technical issues that prevent them from sharing their testimony today, we will pause, then move on to the next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background, and we will be sure to call your name again at a later time. If this happens to you, please revisit the how-to guides available on the NYC Engage portal for assistance. Also for assistance, anyone calling us today and listening in should hang up the phone, call 646-588-8656. When prompted for a meeting ID, dial 954-4141-4473, 954-4141-4473. And when prompted for the password, dial the number 1. I'll now list the first 4 speakers who have registered to provide testimony. And those are speaker number 1, Council Member Ben Kalos; speaker number 2, Council Member Keith Powers; speaker number 3, Council Member Brad Lander; speaker number 4, Council Member Carlos Menchaca, or Cesar Vargas on behalf of Council Member Menchaca. Council Member Ben Kalos, if you are in the room, we are ready for your testimony. Kindly unmute yourself. All right, my colleagues are letting me know that Council Member Ben Kalos is not currently in the room, so we'll move on to our next speaker, Council Member Keith Powers. Council Member Keith Powers, please unmute yourself. We're ready for your testimony.
Hello, my name is Kate Theobald. I'm Chief of Staff to Councilmember Keith Powers. He was intending to testify today and had an unexpected scheduling conflict, but he sent me with his testimony, which I will read briefly right now.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am City Council Member Keith Powers, representing Midtown and the east side of Manhattan. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. Today, the Department of City Planning is considering a citywide special permit requiring for new hotel development. As the City Council member representing East Midtown, I can speak directly to the use of a special permit requirement. In 2017, the New York City Council passed the historic East Midtown rezoning to encourage new development and investment in the East Midtown area. During this process, the city installed a special permit requirement to allow the city to balance the different use groups and needs in this area. This special permit requirement was agreed upon strategy by the Department of City Planning and the New York City Council for this area. In the 3 years since the adoption of the East Midtown rezoning, we have seen how utilizing special permits for hotels allows for comprehensive planning and development that appropriately addresses all interests and concerns. We also have, in fact, seen new proposals that incorporate hotels alongside commercial space. At a time when the city faces large questions about the future of our city, I have confidence that a special permit process can work successfully to allow the Department of City Planning and the City Council to make smart and strategic decisions about land use moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I understand now that Councilmember Ben Kalos is in the room. Councilmember Kalos, if you're in the room, please unmute yourself. We're ready for your testimony.
Thank you. I am here and thank you for having me. Thank you to City Planning Chair Lago and members of the City Planning Commission for bringing the proposed citywide text amendment requiring special permits for new hotels. I stand as a City Council member in support of this citywide hotel text amendment with the goal of creating a consistent framework for hotel development and ensuring new hotels are established on appropriate sites. Hotels can have a significant impact. Legal hotel rooms have actually increased by 54,000 since 2007. And I'm concerned that as we seek to recover and folks are looking at different pieces, we have an enormous number of affordable housing, affordable apartments, rent-regulated housing, apartments that everyday New Yorkers could be living in that may be displaced because of illegal hotel operators like Airbnb. And I'm concerned that as people seek to recover, unscrupulous landlords might just seek to convert a lot of our housing stock into hotels. And we need every square inch we can have for affordable housing to protect rent-regulated housing, rent-controlled, rent-stabilized, rent-controlled. And so I think that it would be important to have a special permit, particularly in districts like mine, where we do have an enormous amount of rent-regulated housing, to keep these apartments safe. And that being said, I do also represent a hospital corridor where family members may wish to be able to stay. And so I want to be able to have a special permit where the community board, the borough president, the local council member can have a role in the process so that we are citing hotels thoughtfully where there is need and where they are welcome, and protecting the housing throughout the neighborhood. So I'm proud to speak in support, and I will be submitting my testimony in writing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Council Member. We'll now move on to our next speaker, Council Member Brad Lander. We are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
Hi all, thank you so much for giving Brad the opportunity to speak today. He's having a little bit of technical difficulties, so if we could come back to him after the next speaker or the one after that, that would be amazing.
Thank you, noted. We'll now move on to our next speaker, Council Member Menchaca or Cesar Vargas on behalf of the Council Member. We're ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself. Once again, we're ready for Council Member Carlos Menchaca or Cesar Vargas. If you are ready and not experiencing technical difficulties, please unmute yourself.
It looks
We're
like
ready for you.
Left the room as well, so we'll come back to them if they're able to join.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. We'll move on to speaker number 5, Council Member Kevin Riley. Please unmute yourself.
Same, looks like they're not in the room. We'll come back to them when they're able to join.
All right, moving right along. New York State Assembly Member Carmen De La Rosa is our next speaker, followed by New York State Assembly Member Emily Gallagher and Richard Barrick on behalf of the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams. We are now ready for Assembly Member Carmen De La Rosa. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. I am Assemblywoman Carmen De La Rosa, and I represent the 72nd District in Upper Manhattan, encompassing the communities of Inwood, Washington Heights, and Marble Hill. I want to thank City Planning for allowing me the opportunity to testify before you on this important citywide hotel text amendment requiring new hotels slated for development in our communities to go through a ULURP process in order to obtain a special permit, it is critical to bring transparency and sufficient community input into these plans. As an elected official, it is my responsibility to ensure that my neighbors, community, stakeholders, our local community boards have the opportunity to scrutinize, give their input, and share their support for new developments that happen in our district, including the development of hotels. The district I represent has undergone a massive rezoning of Inwood in the last few years. And while I will not rehash the many concerns my community cited in opposition to that plan, one principle that is shared among our neighbors is that our community must have a voice in future development that occurs here. Our voices will ensure that new hotels are built and operated in a responsible manner, that there is accountability, that there are safe working conditions for those who are working at the sites, and that there is a clear and thoughtful process. We want to make sure that development stays true to the character of our community and addresses the present and future needs of our neighborhoods. In the past, our office has fielded complaints from already existing hotels on different quality of life issues in the surrounding areas, including congregation of people at entrances, added traffic congestion, given that we have several busy commercial corridors. Our community also continues to battle the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and our small businesses are still reeling from the economic loss that they have endured during this time. It is important for us to have the opportunity to strategically plan for any new developments and ensure that they do not hinder the recovery of our small businesses, but rather enhance the flow of visitors and of people who can enjoy the commercial corridors that exist in Upper Manhattan. I want to also echo the sentiments of Councilmember Ben Kalos. I too have a major city hospital in my district, and we are often accommodating for folks who come in to either visit ill family members or to work as frontline workers at these hotels. And it is important to have the input of the surrounding communities. Our community should be part of the visioning process when hotels are proposed in our communities to ensure that our neighbors feel engaged and safe, and that the hotel can also be successful. I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to express my support. And I want to emphasize the importance of the environmental review before we bring in new developments into our communities. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. I understand now that we still haven't heard from several of the elected officials who had signed up to speak. So we're going to continue ahead with speaker number 7. That is New York State Assembly member Emily Gallagher. Kindly unmute yourself. We're ready for your testimony.
Hello, I'm New York State Assembly member Emily Gallagher, and I'm representing the 50th District, which is Williamsburg, Greenpoint, and Clinton Hill. And we are a district that has a very wide manufacturing zone that has been in the last 20 years rapidly developed into hotel and tourist districts. And it has had incredible impacts on our daily life for residents and for businesses. I'd like to echo the sentiments of my colleague, Assemblymember De La Rosa, in the traffic impacts and also in the impacts on small businesses. While the tourist economy is a wonderful economy to bring into New York City, it does have different interests than necessarily the interests of our residents and the needs of our residents. So there is a large impact when hotels are developed in an area, sometimes shifting away from needed businesses to more luxury oriented businesses. I think that we would greatly benefit in my district to be able to decide where hotels are put and have an input into the working conditions and the labor conditions for those who are working in them, and also to have the opportunity to write community benefits agreements with the folks who are seeking to build the establishment. I am in full support of an environmental review, and I'm in full support of a ULURP process for hotels. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now move back to Councilmember Carlos Menchaca, who I believe is in the room. We are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself, Councilmember.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. Sorry. I think we had some technical difficulties, but I'm really thankful to be here in front of you all to talk about something that's really important to Sunset Park and District 38. We've had many conversations about the possible text amendment change for a citywide hotel permit. What's really important about this conversation is that it brings the community through the council member and through the community board access to the decision about a hotel. That is something that's incredibly embedded into what we've been doing in Sunset Park to really bring engagement. The community board has been incredibly important in building out the future of the changes of zoning in the working waterfront. And when we're thinking about how to place resources and change zoning, giving power to the community through a special permit is how we want to go. There are so many things that are important about this, and I think you've heard about the climate change conversation. We are also incredibly worried about the use of hotels for warehousing many of our New Yorkers in inefficient use of housing. These are all things that community board members are talking about and need to be engaged in. This is something that's not only supported by our city council, me as a city council member, but also our community board. And so we're very excited to be here to support this. And I'm hoping that we continue this conversation in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, we will now move on to Councilmember Brad Lander, who I understand has joined us. Councilmember Lander, kindly unmute yourself. We're ready for your testimony.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for this important scoping hearing and for the opportunity to submit testimony in support of a citywide hotel text amendment. Hotel development presents a unique set of land use challenges for communities, quality of life, traffic, and our city's economy that merit special permit review in each case. The City Planning Commission and the City Council recognized this fact a couple of years ago when we passed the M1 hotel text amendment. In manufacturing districts, we were rightly concerned that unfettered hotel development would cause conflicts with industrial uses, drive up prices in M zones, and eliminate manufacturing jobs and diminish the space our city needs for manufacturing, industrial, commercial, and institutional uses. That was a good step forward, but unfettered as of right hotel development presents conflicts in residential zones as well. As we all know, in too many cases, when built without proper review, new hotels cause quality of life problems for nearby residents, create traffic problems, generate low-wage jobs and displace better paying ones, and displace the opportunity for new housing and affordable housing. Requiring a special permit for new hotel construction will help communities, the hotels themselves, and our cities as a whole. Giving community members and elected officials a voice in hotel development will help ensure that steps have been taken to prevent potential quality of life problems from growing. Special permit review will also enable planning officials to address traffic issues that often pop up around new hotel sites and make sure that they are addressed in ways that minimize congestion and increase pedestrian safety. Adopting this new rule now will help to steer hotel developments in a way that promotes successful long-term recovery for the city's hospitality industry by establishing a model for future hotel development that fits better into communities where it's located. And finally, special permit review will allow for consideration of how potential hotel development fits within our city's broader land use planning, infrastructure, and economic goals. We're in urgent need of new development that creates good jobs, increases our affordable housing supply, and invests in sustainable infrastructure to help our city thrive amidst the challenges of climate change. Where new development helps to advance those goals, we welcome and encourage it, and I've really worked to do that. But where it could detract from those goals by displacing opportunities for housing construction, displacing good jobs, increasing traffic, or stressing our infrastructure, we must carefully review it. A special permit is an appropriate tool for doing so here. I look forward to seeing the scope of the EIS and the EIS itself and to seeing this action move forward. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. I'll now note that we have 2 speakers remaining in this round, in this phase of the scoping meeting. And those speakers are number 8, Richard Barrick, on behalf of Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and speaker number 9, Bronx Community Board 12 Representative Dr. Michael Burke. Richard Barrick, we are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Barrick. I am Land Use Director for Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. And the Borough President appreciates this opportunity to testify. Today, we're really looking to hear what the members of the public and our fellow elected officials are sharing of concerns regarding the scope. And we will consider providing official comments before the written deadline. But again, we are looking forward to promptly reviewing an actual application when a text is referred out, and we could bring this to the Brooklyn Borough Board so that we could submit formal recommendations on this matter in, again, a timely manner. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll move right along to speaker number 9, Bronx Community Board 12 Representative Dr. Michael Burke. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very, very much. I would like to thank the Department of City Planning for this opportunity to speak. I'd also like to thank my Councilman Kevin Raleigh, for this opportunity to speak as well. I believe on behalf of the Community Board that we are in support of this text amendment, and the reason why is quite simple. In 2011, the Department of City Planning proposed a zoning resolution for us, which we as a community board adopted. Part of that zoning resolution included adopting commercial overlays as well as residential overlays that were contextual. At the time, we had non-contextual development that was occurring in the Williamsbridge-Basechester portion of the Bronx, which of course is what encompasses part of Community Board 12. What wound up happening was that initially we saw relief. However, there's a hotel that's being built right now on Boston Road that is non-contextual in scope. And of course, it is as of right. So we as a community board had absolutely no say-so in this development. If the text amendment that you're proposing was in place at the time, then the developers of this particular hotel would have had to come in front of the community board, and we would have expressed our concerns toward this developer, in particular towards this development. And obviously we may have been able to augment this particular development that's taking place right now. So with that being said, since that did not occur, the developer used the as of right permissions that are afforded to them via the city charter. And of course, now we have a non-contextual building that is being built right now in my community board, as well as Councilman Raleigh's district. So we are in support of this, and anything that we can do in Community Board 12 here in the Bronx to assist our councilmen as well as our elected officials, we'd be deeply indebted to you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your testimony. I understand that we have one additional elected official who has just joined us for this segment, and that is Council Member Justin Brannan. Council Member, please unmute yourself. We are ready for your testimony.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I am dialing in today to offer my full support for the proposed citywide hotel text amendment. While the hotel industry is absolutely critical to our city, we are experiencing a citywide housing crisis unlike ever before, which is only going to get worse after the pandemic. We have a very, very real need for housing and only so much space to build it. Here in my district, the last 2 times that a hotel was planned as of right, the community was in a total uproar, not only because of the impact that hotels can have on communities, but because there's nowhere near enough housing in the neighborhood, and residents were clear that if there's available space, first and foremost, affordable housing should be considered for it. My district needs lots of things. I've never had someone suggest to me that what we really need is more hotels. A special permit requirement will give local residents and their elected officials a stronger voice and not having to fight to ensure housing development is an option. At a time when we cannot house every single New Yorker, the idea that a hotel can be built as of right in certain areas, but housing cannot, is completely insane. We're in a housing emergency, and so housing needs to be an option on the table for every free location in which a hotel is being considered, particularly at a time when tourism is at an all-time low, and we are considering converting vacant commercial space to residential to meet this dire need. If we're going to build more hotels, we need to give the community a real voice over the appropriateness of their development. A key consideration must be the impact that nuisance hotels have on our communities. In my district, over the past decade, there have been endless, well-documented problems caused by a place called the Prince Hotel. This notorious hotel has brought violence and all sorts of other stuff to a very quiet residential block in Bay Ridge. The very fact that this disruptive hotel is flagrantly breaking zoning laws due to its location in a residential neighborhood is proof that hotels are oftentimes an intense, problematic, and out-of-context development that should most certainly require more input from the community before being built. Although the full text of the amendment has yet to be released, a review of the draft scope of work shows that DCP is taking a measured and what I think is a thoughtful approach to the issues surrounding hotel development in our city. And I commend them for what appears to be a great start to something that will be so critical to all stakeholders, from our neighbors to the city's entire hotel industry. I think it's about time that we gave New Yorkers a say in the type of development that so profoundly would affect their daily lives. So it's for all these reasons that I lend my full support to the special permits amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. At this time, it appears that we will be concluding our second segment of the public scoping meeting, and we will now proceed to part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members of the general public will have the opportunity to provide testimony for up to 3 minutes. A 3-minute time tracker is now displayed on the screen for the sake of those who are joining us online. For those of you providing testimony over the phone, we will alert you when your time has expired. Please remember that after the 3 minutes have expired, we will move on to the next speaker. Once again, if anyone experiences technical difficulties that do not allow them to provide testimony, we will pause, move on to the next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background. And we do encourage everyone to visit nyc.gov/NYCENGAGE for assistance on how to participate. And for assistance, anyone listening in today, calling in via telephone, should hang up the phone, call 646-588-8656. When prompted for a meeting ID, dial 954-4141-4473. When prompted for a password, dial the number 1. I'll now list the first batch of speakers who have joined us today and wish to provide testimony. I'll note that these are speakers who have registered online, and these speakers are speaker number 10, Mary Bullock, speaker number 11, Jessica Katz, speaker number 12, Ben Carlos Thaipen, and I fully apologize if I mispronounce your name. Speaker number 13, Juan Rodriguez. And I believe that's all I've got for the moment. So we'll start with speaker number 10, Mary Bullock. We are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon. I represent thousands from neighborhoods in the 4 outer boroughs, 2 in the Bronx, 2 in Brooklyn, 6 in Queens, and 2 on Staten Island. We support your goal that all new hotels be vetted for appropriate siting and their impact on the surrounding area. We are thrilled hotels are the topic for today, but we urge city government to immediately defer all hotel transient development in favor of permanent housing. Only permanent housing can guarantee New York City will conquer COVID and future COVIDs and restore our prosperity. Developers of integrity can be persuaded to go along with this. Permanently housed people have a fighting chance to be healthy and law-abiding, have jobs, pay taxes, and support local businesses. Tourists, business travelers, commercial tenants, the world will return only when they trust New Yorkers are healthy. Permanent housing will attract students, creatives, and entrepreneurs, guaranteeing our future cultural and business primacy. We are also thrilled hotels are the topic for today because hotel development underway right now needs to be halted and investigated as enterprise corruption under RICO. This is how it works. Riverbrook Equities and developers of their ilk use a bait and switch business model. They present as a hotel operator to the obscure and less than lucrative locations I speak for today. What they are really after is the revenue stream from emergency human warehousing, legal but corrupt. They take our hard-earned tax dollars and through a murky labyrinth of stakeholders disguised as national hotel chains, funnel it into the pockets of the 1%, legal but corrupt. The hotel occupants and our communities are left to bear the social and environmental damage. And make no mistake, we all bear the economic consequences, legal but corrupt. Riverbrook currently has 12 hotels built or proposed in our outer borough neighborhoods of opportunity. Translation, diverse Black, brown, and immigrant communities unable to defend themselves. When these hotels inevitably fail, the DHS swoops in, declaring emergency, and with no fiscal oversight, squanders our tax dollars. The Department of Investigation says Riverbrook's construction consultant, Amrit Paul Sandhu, was arrested for influence peddling and bribery in 2017, just plain corrupt. Hotels must prevent a guest from staying longer than 30 days and accruing tenants' rights. Moving around the homeless is human trafficking, definitely corrupt. Please end this now. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll move right along to our next speaker, and that is speaker number 12, Jessica Katz. Please unmute yourself. We are ready for your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hello, and thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jessica Katz. I'm the Executive Director of the Citizens Housing and Planning Council, or CHPC. CHPC was formed in 1937 to help create practical public policies in housing and urban planning in New York City. We use research and education to help address the most pressing neighborhood needs. In CHPC's 80-year history, New York City has seen its share of ups and downs, but even taking a very long view, as our organization does, the challenges we face today are colossal and unprecedented. We have an uncontrolled global pandemic, a racial equity crisis, and our economy is in tatters. Fewer government resources are available to cover a wider range of needs. New Yorkers are getting sick and dying daily. Tens of thousands of New Yorkers are living in homeless shelters. City government staff have risked layoffs, been furloughed, and redeployed towards crisis management. Over the summer, HPD staff helped out with food distribution efforts and an air conditioning program for seniors. This fall, Department of Building staff took charge of logistics for school reopening. Department of City Planning has a lot on its plate as well in the final year of this administration. An opportunity to promote fair housing in Soho, NoHo, create an environmentally just rezoning in Gowanus, make sure our land use process turns the tide on climate change, and perfect new ways for New Yorkers to virtually participate in public policy decisions about their neighborhoods and other priorities. We need DCP to move full speed ahead on these and any other ideas that promote health, equity, and prosperity in our city during this challenging time. The hotel special permit proposal serves none of these goals and will probably inhibit some of them. Why make it harder for our tourist economy to bounce back? If it doesn't bounce back, why drag it down even further? In an era we know we'll have to be nimble and pivot to seize opportunities for recovery and allow our land use systems to manage unanticipated new challenges, why bog down the process with greater cost and greater bureaucracy? Why add to the cost of building any new hotels? And why spend nearly $1 million of taxpayer money to study the impact of doing so? We simply cannot find any reason to prioritize this, especially not at this moment. How can New York City continue to be one of the greatest tourist destinations in the world if we outlaw as of right hotels, even in the neighborhoods designed specifically for them? We know special permits act as a major deterrent to any new building. In fact, since a special permit requirement was imposed on hotels in M zones in 2018, it has resulted in the creation of 0 new hotels. Instead of imposing new restrictions just when we need the economic stimulus the most, we should be analyzing the code for places where we can remove restrictions to jumpstart our economy and help our city bounce back. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is number 13, Ben Carlos Thigpen, followed by number 14, Juan Rodriguez. Ben Carlos Thigpen, we are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Ben Carlos Thigpen, and I'm here as a New Yorker who cares about good government to testify in opposition to the proposed citywide special permit for hotels. First, I would like to second comments made by the prior speaker about there being no urban planning or land use rationale for the proposed special permit. But everyone here already knew that. So let's dispense with the notion that this has anything to do with policy planning. Instead, I would like to focus my comments in opposition on the politics of this and the implications of its passage into law. It's no secret that the Hotel Trades Council is a powerful political force in the city, and their financial support of legislators, and in particular the mayor, is the only reason we're even discussing this. Before I go on, I would like to make clear that I firmly believe in workers' rights to organize, believe that overall unions have been an enormous force for good in this country, and the industrial business my family ran in the city for over half a century was a union shop. That said, if this special permit passes, it would set an incredibly troubling precedent in which the special interests are able to outsource their organizing to the government. After all, if this works, why shouldn't the building trades push for a special permit for all residential development? Or an extreme example, why shouldn't the plumbers union push for every toilet installation require a special permit? Or in a non-organized labor example, why shouldn't the nursing home lobby push for a special permit for nursing home development in order to protect their members from new competitive supply? The last one isn't hypothetical, as we've had a special permit requirement for nursing home development, and it's been a policy disaster and profit bonanza for nursing home operators. Since the special permit for nonprofit institutions of sleeping accommodations, which includes nursing homes, supportive housing, and shelters, was enacted in 1972, there have been a total of 12 applications that have resulted in 1,400 beds. According to the Department of Health, New York City is short 10,000 nursing home beds, which doesn't even count the 100,000 plus supportive and shelter units, which we need, that are also inhibited by the special permit. But let's say you're okay with all that, and you think there's nothing untoward about unions or outsourcing their organizing work to the government, and all you care about is increasing the number of unionized hotel workers. The ostensible organizing rationale for the special permit is twofold. First, if hotel development requires a council vote, the council will make unionization a requirement of approval. And second, if the increase in supply of new hotels is curtailed, then the union can focus on organizing existing hotels. But we know that both those things would not occur in practice because we've had a special permit in place in manufacturing zones for several years, and since then, practically no hotels have been built in those areas, nor have any existing hotels become unionized. This is plainly a power grab by an unholy alliance of the Hotel Association and the Hotel Trades Council to protect the profits of existing hotel owners, and maybe, if they're lucky, increase the compensation of existing unionized hotel workers. It wouldn't help any non-unionized hotel workers or workers who want to work at new hotels. It wouldn't help the city generate more tax revenue. It wouldn't help construction workers, unionized or otherwise. It wouldn't help affordable housing nonprofits who would like to take advantage of a historic opportunity to convert hotels into deeply affordable housing. It wouldn't help the vast majority of city that rents. It wouldn't help tourists or business. Ironically, the only people it would help are Airbnb, HTC's moral enemy, as it would inevitably push more tourists and Airbnbs. In conclusion, I urge the powers that be to scrap this proposal and focus on enacting policies that would actually help people instead of proposals that would, like this, that would still solely benefit already powerful interests at the expense of every other New Yorker and the city as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. I'll now call on the next 5 speakers. Number 14, Juan Rodriguez. Number 15, Susie Pangawian. Number 16, Jonah Dill Dascouli. Number 17, Ron Rushalau. Number 18, David Karnofsky. Number 14, Juan Rodriguez. We are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. Listen, I'm just a simple person. I've lived in Sunset Park my whole life. I've seen the destruction of how many hotels are just built free will, and how is it impacted living out here. And I've seen it absolutely turn upside down. I've seen crime rise on low-level hotel motels, whatever you want to call it, as in the Phoenix Hotel. The Phoenix Hotel is a perfect example of things done wrong. They were shut down momentarily when raided by 5 city agencies, including Homeland, Secret Service, ended up on the news for human trafficking. I feel that special permits are needed to enforce the rights of the people that live in the community. I think that special permits is something that's needed, and I really, really agree with the proposal, and I would love to see this happen. I hate to see the community suffer, and it's just a sad thing. And thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now move on to our next speaker, number 15, Susie Pangawian. Please unmute yourself. We're ready for your testimony.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Susie. First, thank you for giving me an opportunity to give my testimony. I've been living in Kew Garden for the last 16 years. I like my neighborhood because for many years it was safe and quiet. I'd never have any issue with the safety. And I usually work early in the morning or go home late at night and never have problem with me. Until before we have issue with the flood of new hotel were built. I live just one block away from the Umbrella Hotel. And then when I first time heard that the hotel opened, I was happy because I thought it would be good for the neighborhood. But instead, there was so many crime happened there, and it turns to be a nightmare to our community. There has been two shooting happened last year, around July and August 2020, and left a big hole in front of the front door of the hotel. And another recent shooting, it happens on New Year's Eve, took a 20-year-old man's life. And then this hotel, I thought it's very dangerous to our community. My neighborhood now are worried about raising the kids near this hotel because before our neighborhood is usually to be a good neighborhood to raise the kids. But now we don't feel safe anymore because we never heard about shooting happen in our place before. And I usually receive regular email from the building that inform us about what happened around this hotel. And we have heard about the reported crime, including rapes, sex trafficking, shootings, and probably like drug dealer activities also inside the hotel. And it's scary and it's not safe, really not safe for our community. I don't know how long I can live here with fear every day, and one day I might be a victim. I wish opening new hotel without special permit won't be allowed. I want special permit for the hotel to keep my neighborhood safe. Recently, resident in my building also sent a press release from the Queens District Attorney announcing that the front desk supervisor at the Umbrella Hotel has been arrested for allowing dangerous gathering at the hotel. And I also include this notice in my written testimony. People in our community are worried too. There was a petition and protest to try to shut down this hotel. I wish my neighbor and I can prevent this from happening before in our community. It's a very serious problem and has to be done to stop the future of the hotel for being built in our neighborhood if they just bring crime and fear to our community. Thank you for giving me time.
Thank you for your testimony. I'll now take a moment to call the names of our next 5 speakers. Number 16, Jonah Dill Dascoli. Number 17, Ron Rocheleau. Number 18, David Karnofsky. Number 19, Richard Barth. And number 20, Carol Rosenthal. Number 16, Jonah Dill Dascoli. We are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
To start with the quote that encapsulates 2020. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. First of all, I hope everyone is safe and healthy starting out this new year, and thank you so much for hearing my concerns. Sorry, my name is Jonah Dildascoli, and I'm here to speak in support of the special permits for these hotels. I live in Long Island City with my wife and our preschool-aged daughter, and we have for about 7+ years now, and we love our neighborhood. But we are a little bit concerned about the impact of these hotels and the development has on the economy and the sort of the fabric of this neighborhood. When the zoning laws changed, our district was allowed more hotels to be built. And since then, about just under 50 new hotels have been built and caused a whole host of different issues. The biggest issue is that the economy of Long Island City cannot sustain so many hotels. They're literally right on top of each other. Even before the pandemic, there was too many rooms and not enough of those budget tourists that would be interested in staying in this area. The area is not quite as popular as Midtown. It does not have the same sort of overabundance of hotels And so a lot of times about half the rooms were empty for large portions of the year. I always ask the question is, why is it if we're having a growing number of people struggling to find decent, affordable housing, particularly in this area, an area that's been traditionally very friendly to affordable to working families, are we now building hotels that are just going to sit feral for who knows how long? Many of the hotels are not consistently full and have fallen into disrepair, leaving an eyesore on the neighborhood and turning into sort of dubious ways to fill the room and making the area feel very unsafe. There are streets that my daughter and I actually won't walk down to anymore because of we're a little bit afraid that I don't want to expose her to those sort of things. A lot of these hotels, because of their lower capacity, have also turned into temporary homeless shelters. Because of the abundance of near empty hotels, anytime the city needs a shelter, they send it here to Long Island City. Now we have multiple homeless shelters that are very close proximity to each other, which to me makes very little sense. I firmly believe, and I want to make this very clear, that shelters and traditional housing are an important part of the support system and provide people and family that we provide for peoples and families. However, we should isolate people and families who have found themselves in difficult circumstances into one neighborhood, as this has been proven time and time again to exacerbate the underlying social issues that created the problems to begin with. This hurts both the community and the homeless population. As an example, we have a halfway house for recently released men in one area right next to a support center for women and battered children. I think this concern and the redistricting of these hotels and making sure that we have special permits so we have a way of speaking to this is a concern that my entire neighborhood shares. I've spoken with my landlord, our neighbors, and my daughter's teachers and classmates. And we all are concerned about the sort of transitioning of hotels and the transitional housing that they've become. Thank you again for all your hard work on behalf of all of our neighbors and all of our great city. And thank you for hearing my time.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now move on to our next speaker, number 17, Ron Rochelle. Please unmute yourself.
I just did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, how you doing? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All righty. So I've been living I live in the Lower East Side for the last 25 years, and there's been unbridled development of hotels in my neighborhood. I'm very much in favor of special permits and anything that gives either the opportunity or gives the opportunity for communities to have a participation in any development that happens in my neighborhood. These hotels that have sprung up in my already overcrowded neighborhood have contributed to violence, have contributed to, I can't tell you, congestion, to noise. Anyway, it's an untenable situation, and I believe that what we need is more community voice, more affordable housing, and not necessarily any more hotels, especially in my neighborhood. It doesn't seem like a good use of the land. So thank you very much for listening to me and for considering what I said.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is number 18, David Karnofsky. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. This is David Karnofsky. I'm here today in my personal capacity as a land use practitioner in private practice who also served as the general counsel at the Department of City Planning for about 15 years. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to address two aspects of the draft scope. First, purpose and need, and second, the socioeconomics analysis proposed for the EIS. According to the draft scope, the text amendment is needed because hotels in commercial districts, and that includes hotels in central business districts, present what it vaguely describes as, quote, land use challenges. The scope does not identify what these land use challenges are. It does not present any data or other evidence to support the assertion that hotels present land use conflicts in high density and other commercial districts. It doesn't cite or present any planning studies to justify a radical departure from zoning rules that have been in effect since 1961. In short, the rationale offered for the proposal is hollow. With respect to socioeconomics, the draft acknowledges that the special permit requirement would present a formidable impediment to development that is today as of right. It predicts that as a result of the text amendment, up to 62,446 hotel rooms would not be developed, resulting in a significant unmet demand. While acknowledging this, the draft scope does not describe in any meaningful detail what the socioeconomics analysis will study and how. In particular, it does not recognize that the effects of this unmet demand for hotel rooms will likely adversely affect not just the hotel industry, but also the large number of businesses that make up the tourism and hospitality sector, including restaurants, theaters, cultural institutions, and others. The ripple effects that the proposal would have on these businesses and the employment and tax revenue they provide are likely to be significant and must be studied. If it is not, the EIS will vastly understate the potential adverse effects of the text amendment. Finally, the draft scope discloses that the proposal has the potential to halt the production of approximately 30,000 units currently in the development pipeline, but is silent regarding measures that can be taken to avoid this result. The mere announcement of this proposal has created confusion and uncertainty among property owners about whether they can continue to proceed with the planned development of hotel space in the coming months. The city should work to solve this issue now before more damage is done. Vesting should not be treated as an issue to be addressed only at the tail end of the land use review process. That is simply too late. The effects of the proposal on the current pipeline can and should be addressed now by including special vesting provisions in the proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll move on to our next speaker, number 19, Richard Barth. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Richard Barth. I'm head of the land use group at Capilano. I am testifying today as a former executive director of city planning and a former Manhattan planning director. Throughout my career at city planning, I've been involved in many zoning amendments. These amendments have had a defensible land use rationale and sought to address defined issues or advance specific policy objectives. This proposal, as described, fails on all counts. Part of the justification for the previous M1 Hotel Special Permit Amendment was that future hotel demand could be accommodated elsewhere in the city. This current proposal would invalidate that conclusion. The resulting land use implications must therefore be analyzed, as well as conflicts with city and state economic policies. Based on the magnitude of the projected hotel shortfall of over 60,000 hotel rooms by 2035, the impacts on the hospitality sector will be severe, not limited to the loss of jobs and increased room prices. The DEIS must also look at the impacts across the spectrum of the hotel submarkets and the potential to foreclose future flexibility to meet changing needs and demands. This will have a direct impact on the city's tourism industry, economic recovery, and long-term growth. The DEIS must also look closely at the impacts on industry sectors that are closely linked to the hospitality sector: tourism, retail and services, entertainment, the food sector, restaurants, and cultural and other institutions. The interdependence of these sectors and uses cannot be underestimated, and it will also be important to analyze impacts on the health and vitality of business districts and other areas. This analysis must acknowledge that few, if any, owners and developers are likely to even pursue a special permit. Based on my experience, in all likelihood, the proposal will preclude most hotel developments due to cost, time, and uncertainty of outcome in the process, and is likely to eliminate the development of all small and moderate hotels, mixed-use hotels, projects, conversions, as well as new products geared to the changing needs of travelers and businesses. If this project moves forward, there will be an urgent need to develop strategies that can ameliorate at least some of the potential impacts, including geographic exclusions and more liberal vesting and grandfathering provisions for new construction and conversions. However, in the long term, the health of the city's business districts, tourism, hospitality, and related industries is likely to be severely compromised, and the consequences of moving forward need to be carefully evaluated and carefully considered.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We're now ready for our next speaker. That is number 20, Carol Rosenthal. Please unmute yourself.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carol Rosenthal. a partner at Fried, Frank, Harris, Driver, and Jacobson, with over 30 years experience in land use and real estate here in the city. I want to emphasize that this special permit will have a serious deterrent effect on new hotels in New York City. The special permit process, of which I've been involved in many, is not a casual additional procedure. It's a major hurdle that will significantly reduce, if not nearly halt, new hotels in the city. The EIS, as the scope suggests, needs to evaluate the proposed action with this tremendous loss. Let's talk a couple minutes about why that's the case. It's, and first, have the additional time, which can take about 2.5 to 3 years from inception. That's not necessarily the same date that it hits city planning, but an additional 3 years from inception. With that, you also have additional fees, but more importantly, the major costs are the carrying costs, the mortgages, and the opportunity costs of not having income producing property for the additional 2 to 3 year period. In addition, with this time, the facility to be constructed won't be in place for 4 to 6 years down the line. It's very difficult to know how any particular market will fare in 4 to 6 years. That's a significant additional risk. On the technical level, you have environmental reviews, design comments, and public reviews and approvals that all bring with them uncertainty of outcome. And even if you make it over those walls, the discretionary action brings with it the possibility of a legal challenge. These costs and uncertainties are added to an industry that is already subject to significant risks. Unlike residential, office, or other uses, a hotel owner does not have a 10-year lease, a 25-year lease, or even a month-to-month. It's a day-to-day occupancy that results in the repricing of rooms and a volatile income stream and a higher risk profile than many other investments. So it's not surprising that there have been no new hotels, no special permits sought in the M1 districts. And with that shortfall of 62,000 rooms, which we believe is real, you'll have unmet demand, increased competition, and increased costs for the rooms that remain. So it's important that all of these, and as the other speakers have identified, the related cultural and other institutions and businesses and international businesses that rely on hotels and their conference room and the like, that will need to be studied in the environmental review so that decision makers can truly understand the significance of this action. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I'm now going to take a moment to move on to members of the public who have joined us via telephone. To those of you who have called in, if you did not register to speak using our dial-in hotline, please indicate, and also if you'd like to provide testimony, please indicate that you would like to speak today by dialing *9, again, *9 on your telephone. Once your phone number is announced by me, please remember, we'll ask you to dial *6 to unmute yourself. So we'll take a brief moment to allow our callers to indicate whether or not they'd like to provide testimony verbally. Once again, please indicate you'd like to speak by dialing *9, and that will tell our members of DCP that you would like to provide testimony at this time. Once again, please dial *9. We'll take a brief moment now to see if anyone has decided to participate and provide testimony verbally at this time who has telephoned in. All right, I'm hearing from my colleagues that there are no callers at this time who would like to provide their verbal testimony. So we'll continue moving ahead with members of the public who have joined us via Zoom and have registered to speak. I'll now take a moment to call the next couple of speakers. Speaker number 21, Caroline Perry. Speaker number 22, Moses Gates. Speaker number 23, Michael Savino. Speaker number 24, Mario Buonviaggio. Number 21, Caroline Perry. We're ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon.
Good
My name
afternoon.
is Caroline Perry, Real Estate and Planning Manager at the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, providing comments on this scope on behalf of DBP. As stated in the scope, the proposed action would require a special permit for new and enlarged hotels in certain zoning districts that currently permit as-of-right hotel development, including downtown Brooklyn. We request that this scope include an alternative that excludes the downtown Brooklyn Special District from the area of applicability. Downtown Brooklyn is the city's third largest central business district and the economic and civic center of the borough, serving a diverse range of users from residents and workers to shoppers and visitors. Over the past few decades, the neighborhood has grown into a mixed-use hub with more than 15,000 residential units, 17 million square feet of office space, and 2,500 hotel keys, along with retailers, schools, universities, and cultural venues. This existing context, bolstered by excellent transit connectivity, makes downtown Brooklyn the ideal location for new hotel development. The proposed action conflicts with city and state economic policies, which call for supporting additional mixed-use growth at this location. Furthermore, local hotels support corporate travel for a number of businesses located in the district. Firms such as JP Morgan Chase, Blue State, and National Grid require places for employees and their clients to stay when visiting the city, and hotels within walking distance of their downtown Brooklyn offices meet this demand. Hotel development also complements the needs of downtown Brooklyn's anchor academic and cultural institutions. Our district is home to nearly a dozen higher education institutions that host scholars and industry partners from around the world. For example, New York University's 370 J Street includes incubator space, lab facilities, and a recording studio that all attract a global audience of entrepreneurs and innovators. Venues in the Brooklyn Cultural District, such as the Brooklyn Academy of Music and BRIC, require nearby lodging for visiting artists as well as tourists who travel to view new performances. Hotel uses are vital to supporting visitation, innovation, and commercial and cultural activity in downtown Brooklyn and are in alignment with the character of the area and its central location. We encourage you to include an alternative in the scope that excludes downtown Brooklyn from the area of applicability for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I'll now take a moment to call on the next 5 members of the public who will be providing testimony at this time. Number 22, Moses Gates. Number 23, Michael Savino. Number 24, Mario Buonviaggio. Number 25, Basha Gerhards. And number 26, Arpikumar Patel. Number 27, Jean Kaufman. Our next speaker is number 22, Moses Gates. Please unmute yourself. We're ready for your testimony.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Moses Gates. I'm the Vice President for Housing and Neighborhood Planning at Regional Plan Association. And on the personal level, I've spent several years working directly in the hospitality industry also as a New York City tour guide. Generally speaking, a public hearing for a scoping meeting is to allow the public to weigh in on what to study for a proposed action. However, generally these proposed actions work towards the stated goal in the draft scope of work, and this is clearly not the case with this proposal. Here, the proposed action is at direct odds with the stated goal. And this begs the question of if this proposal, entire proposal, should be withdrawn as the premise for the study is deeply flawed. The stated premise of this proposal is to create a quote, more uniform zoning framework for new hotels citywide that could support more predictable development. However, what the department is proposing to study is the exact opposite of a framework that would lead to more uniformity and predictability. Instead, what they are proposing to study is the effects of instituting an ad hoc process for permitting a specific use, one in which every action would be subject to uncertainty and unpredictability, and almost certainly result in a heavily discretionary and non-uniform development citywide. This is even suggested in the draft scope of work itself, which states that, quote, obtaining the special permit can add significant time, cost, and uncertainty to a project. This proposal is doubly confounding as the scope of work also notes that although hotels are appropriate and desirable uses in the city's commercial, mixed use, and light manufacturing districts, reviewing the project's relationship to area context of new hotels will result in better configuration of the use to minimize conflicts with adjacent uses and protect the safety of hotel guests. If hotels are considered appropriate and desirable uses, with the only rationales for a citywide special permit being conflict for adjacent uses and protecting the safety of hotel guests, it begs the question of how these safety and conflict concerns are particular to hotels and their occupants. What is unique about a hotel guest that engenders more safety concerns from the surrounding urban environment than an office worker or a restaurant patron or anyone else trying to cross the street? Wouldn't a child care facility, for instance, engender more concerns over protecting the safety of its users from the surrounding environment? And yet we see no proposal to require a special permit examining the effects of safety for childcare facilities. At minimum, as part of the scope of work, it is incumbent on DCP to point out what exactly these safety concerns are, back them up with evidence, and explain how they are different from the safety concerns of anyone else. As far as conflict with surrounding uses, a citywide special permit for hotel use would make hotels the only significant use that would need a special permit citywide.
We are at time. Thank you so much for your testimony. We will continue to accept testimony in writing. We're moving right along to our next speaker, number 23, Michael Savino.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Hello, my name is Michael Savino. I'm a lifelong New Yorker who currently lives and owns property for the past 14 years in Sheepshead Bay with my husband, Rolando. Just a few blocks away from the Lighthouse Inn, the Comfort Inn, and Best Western Plus, all on Emmons Avenue in Sheepshead Bay. I'm here today to speak in favor of special permits because I'm really hoping they'll protect my neighborhood and keep it safe. The Lighthouse Inn, the Comfort Inn, and the Best Western Plus have not been good neighbors and have made it difficult to be safe in my neighborhood community. All three hotels allow people to loiter in front of the entrances, publicly urinating and defecating along Emmons Avenue in Sheepshead Bay. There have been fights outside the hotels, and there are often drunken people loitering outside the entrances and leaving bottles of alcohol and garbage all over the sidewalks. It doesn't feel safe to walk on Emmons Avenue anymore, especially at night. A new park is being built a few yards away from the Lighthouse Inn and the Comfort Inn on Emmons Avenue. I wouldn't feel safe going there because of the way the Lighthouse Inn and Comfort Inn allow homeless people and troublemakers to drink and hang out and often fight right outside their doors. I don't know how kids and families were able to go to the new park when the entrance is so close to the hotels, just a couple of yards. These hotels do not take care of the property. I've attached photos to my testimony to show the garbage spilling out in front of the Lighthouse Hotel and the Comfort Inn parking lots. It's disgusting and unsanitary to let the garbage fester all over the public streets. Sheepshead Bay is a residential neighborhood, and these hotels don't feel like the type of hotels you want to bring to your family, and not at all. And they certainly do not feel like part of our community. I believe that going forward, communities should have a say in future hotel projects before they come to our neighborhoods. And this is why I support special permits. And I'm really hoping that this will help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is number 24, Mario Buonviaggio. Please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm just trying to move so I could read. All right. Good afternoon, all. My name is Mario Buonviaggio. I represent Port Richmond Strong Civic in Staten Island. I am in support of this citywide hotel tax amendment, which would require this amendment to establish a new city planning commission for special permits and new transient hotels currently allowed as of right, including C1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, mixed use and paired M1R districts. Port Richmond and Staten Island has been struggling with economic, environmental, and social injustice and hamstrung by as of right zoning ripe for exploitation. Our historic Staten Island neighborhood is currently under siege by an unscrupulous builder, Amitpril Tashpil Sandhu, who is attempting to put one such transient hotel at 35 Port Richmond Avenue. In 2009, we received a stop work order on the site and it was found that he was performing illegal demolition, exposing his workers and our residents of asbestos. The same person, Sandu, was charged with influence peddling and bribery in 2017 at a different project. His ability to continue to operate should be investigated. Today, due to the loopholes in the current as-of-right zoning for transient hotels, we have little recourse to stop what Sandu has planned at this site. These type of transient hotels destroy the future of our district to be a thriving neighborhood. A hotel at 35 Port Richmond is a bait and switch for a homeless shelter or a type of social service transit facility, which some being transfer facilities for recently released convicts, some level 1 sexual predators, as has been done in Mott Haven, Bronx, Jamaica, Queens, Far Rockaway, and in Flatbush, Brooklyn, along with 14 other hotels. All must be stopped. I have personally worked hard with our community to build our civic association. Historically, we represent the most diverse community with over 500 members. We have cleaned empty lots, towed abandoned cars, stopped graffiti and illegal dumping. Now, business owners and residents are grabbing on and taking part in revitalizing this area. When it comes to development, we can only fight for our community if we have the right tools. This citywide hotel tax amendment is an extra level of community input, and the new hotel special permit would require new hotels and other transient uses to go through ULURP, the city's land use review process. We strongly suggest to add to the amendment requiring a thorough vetting process, including a criminal history background check, credit checks, and an IRS audit for every individual and or LLC company requesting for such a project by the City of New York. I thank you all and have a happy new year.
Thank you for your testimony. At this time, I'll take a moment to call the names of speakers numbers 25 through 30. Number 25, Basha Gerhardt. Number 26, Mr. Patel has told us that he would no longer like to speak today. Number 27, Jean Kaufman. Number 28, Spencer Heckwolf. Number 29, Ilya Schwartzberg. And number 30, a dial-in caller participant with the phone number ending in 980. But number 25, Basha Gerhardt, we are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
The volume is a bit low, but we can hear you.
Is that better, Olga?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I am Basha Gerhardt, Vice President of Policy and Planning for the Real Estate Board of New York. Thank you for the opportunity to submit comments today. At a time when we need jobs and economic activity more than ever, this proposal seeks to undermine our economic recovery and other city efforts to affirm New York is open for business. REBNY requests that the department prioritize the consideration of an economic analysis of not just the direct loss of tax revenue from the shortfall of 60,000 plus rooms from the City of New York that will result from the action, but also the indirect losses to the city's economy. The hotel industry is part of a larger hospitality sector with various businesses dependent upon the flow of tourists, visitors, and business travelers that patronize hotels. The draft scope of work lacks any discussion of how the city will approach this question of indirect impacts, despite the obvious importance of hotels to the city's economy. The draft scope of work does make clear just how much adoption of this proposal would stifle an industry that has brought jobs, revenue, and growth opportunities to all 5 boroughs. The department's own documents state visitors who stayed in hotels in the city accounted for over $13 billion in direct and indirect business sales. Hotels directly supported 305,900 jobs and accounted for $940 million in property tax, $634 million in hotel occupancy tax, and $425 million in sales tax. In M1 zoning districts, the city's special permit requirement for new hotels resulted in no new hotel projects. CPC special permits generally present a disincentive to development and can add significant time, cost, and uncertainty. And under the with action condition, up to 62,446 for future hotel rooms could be affected by the special permit, end quote. The task must also address the glaring disconnect between the land use and public policy analysis for the M1 hotel text amendment and this action, how individual neighborhood prioritization in the special districts will be accounted for in a citywide permit with citywide findings that treats all hotels, regardless of location and surrounding uses, as a nuisance category. whether adoption of this proposal would fuel an informal hotel market to meet demand, and whether that would impact availability of lower rent housing, including whether there would be a heightened risk of displacement, and whether higher room rates will change the socioeconomic profile of visitors and tourists, and in turn have indirect effects on the industries that serve them. There is no rational land use basis to justify moving forward with the creation of a citywide hotel special permit. A robust economic analysis and examination of cross-purposes policy goals will reinforce that there can be no reasonable findings for such a permit. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments and for consideration of these points. Additional task-specific comments have been provided in a written submission.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now move on to our next speaker, and that is Jean Kaufman, number 27. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. The proposal for special permits comes in a context of prior special permits for hotels. Most recently, M1 zoning throughout the city, but also East Midtown and a number of other special districts. This history is incredibly clear. Not only have there been no special permits granted for hotels in these districts, there have not even been any applications. The difficulties associated, the uncertainties involved, and the overall real estate market, which precludes people moving forward in conditions which are not likely to end up to their benefit. All of these have produced a situation where hotel development has gone to zero. And this proposal for a special permit is likely to have the same effect. There will be no new special permits issued if history is any guide. Unfortunately, this will result, as has been mentioned, in a shortage of hotel rooms based upon the travel and tourist records that we have over these past years, when the booming travel market has lifted New Yorkers and businesses and sections of the city in significant ways. It's been indicated in the draft report, 1/3 of the hotels rooms that have been created have closed. Many more may close or may convert to other uses. No one has mentioned, but the governor has proposed to facilitate conversions of hotels to residential use, which will further impact the number of hotel rooms that will remain. Furthermore, the analysis discounts impact on pipeline hotels and assumes that all of those will be completed and opened, which may or may not be the case. So I think a reasonable scenario here is that there will be a shortage of many more than the 60,000 rooms that have been identified. And ultimately, that will prevent people from traveling to the city at a time when hopefully we're recovering from a pandemic, and hopefully you're going to see a return to a business and economic environment that provides jobs and income for our people. If that is the case, there will be a major impact on Broadway, on stores, on restaurants, on businesses of all types that depend upon people traveling to the city, bringing their money to be spent in our communities. This will have a major impact on many other kinds of businesses besides hotels.
Thank you for your testimony. We're expired in terms of time. We'll now move on to our next speaker, number 28, Spencer Heckwolf. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry, Olga, just 28 will be Ilya Schwartzberg, and then we'll go to Spencer Heckwolf.
Understood. Our next speaker is Ilya Schwartzberg. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Ilya Schwartzberg. I'm a state committee member with the Libertarian Party of New York, as well as chair of the Manhattan Libertarian Party. I'd just like to speak mostly to add to the testimony of past speakers who have argued in opposition to this proposal. I would just like to add about certain unspoken constituencies that we haven't addressed yet. that there are vast, including the fact that there are vast unstated effects of the proposal. And if COVID is a temporary situation, we will have lost a great part of our existing hotels and we will be unable to build any new ones, meaning that there will be a huge unmet demand. And what does that demand mean? It means that tourists, prospective residents, and people in temporary situations will be deprived of affordable temporary housing in New York City, which can lead to untold effects that have not been discussed. In fact, contrary to the city council people's testimony, it will inordinately eat into our existing housing stock during a housing shortage because the demand does not go away, it gets displaced, and whatever the city tries to do in terms of cracking down on Airbnb is going to be ineffective. In terms of, and I just wanted to mention the fact that this proposal is not at all consistent with an idea of planning. It is anti-planning. It abandons the concept of as-of-right development, which has served as the only steam valve for this city that has otherwise been incredibly politically anti-development. Not only does this proposal cast a shadow on development in general, but it also has a shadow of political corruption, as people have talked about before. And what about safety, equity, and the environment? Well, safety, as people have talked about, they've mostly talked about certain aspects that have been really a product of the prohibition that the state has and the city have pursued against drugs and sex work. Those risks can be met by decriminalization, not by banning hotels. Equity is best served by not pursuing this proposal, which will create an increasingly exclusive and luxury class of grandfathered hotels. There's not an insignificant class of persons who will be shut out of now more expensive hotels and forced into homelessness. What's a person supposed to do when they get out of jail? What's a person supposed to do when they get divorced? In fact, the cost of homelessness will only go up because the city relies on hotels. And finally, the environment is best served by having New York City be a welcoming environment, because living in New York City uses a fraction of the carbon resources that living outside of it does, and we should stay a welcoming place. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker, I believe, is Spencer Heckle. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I want to strongly oppose the special permit. This makes no sense to me, and I'm sure glad we weren't doing these things at the turn of the 20th century. When most of the development in New York was as of right, and we encouraged as much development, as much immigration, as much visitation as possible. This is clearly just a way to devolve power to local NIMBYs and busybodies that want to put their hands all over every single development in this city. What we need is a comprehensive plan that makes building housing, hotels, and all other land uses as of right. If we decide that hotels don't belong in a certain area, that's fine, but it should be done at a citywide level, not at a hyper local level, which just creates dysfunction and just devolves power to people with excess time and excess influence within a community. Most people do not have time to come to a public meeting, to give input, and to peddle influence with their local elected officials or local leaders. You know, and it's also telling, the people that will be affected by this, they can't join the call because they're visitors to New York. They live other places. And maybe people don't care about them, but I do. I certainly visited this city when I was young, and I might not have been able to do that unless there were enough hotel rooms. My family was extremely wealthy. They couldn't afford the Waldorf Astoria. Excuse me. I don't want to deprive people of the chance to visit and experience New York. That's why I live here today, because I fell in love with the city when I was 12 years old. So this just, to me, is completely bogus. And we should not be, again, devolving power to hyper-local influence peddlers. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now move on to one dial-in participant who wishes to provide testimony. That person's phone number ends in the digits 980. Please remember to dial *6 to unmute yourself and state your name for our records. Once again, we are waiting for our dial-in participant. Phone number ending in the digits 980. Please dial *6 and unmute yourself. We're ready for your testimony.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Paul Kane. I'm calling in as a New Yorker to strongly oppose the special permit. Were our council members truly concerned about the city's lack of affordable and supportive housing, as several claim to be, they would view the proliferation of hotels as an indication that our residential zoning is neither dense enough nor widespread enough to provide enough homes to New Yorkers. In most neighborhoods, the choice between building hotel rooms or residences would always favor the residential development. But because hotels cannot be developed in residential zones and residential properties cannot be developed in the commercial areas that currently allow hotels, this special permit does nothing to increase the development of housing. It's a false dilemma that council members are bringing up in order to muddy the waters and hide the obvious purpose of this special permit proposal. And frankly, I expect more from our elected officials. Were the city council interested in housing production or the negative externalities of hotels, and not simply doing a favor for their campaign contributors, they would be proposing innovative ways to increase housing throughout the city and thinking about citywide hotel strategy, as the previous caller mentioned, not devolving this to the block level. As it stands, advocates for this bill are helping out incumbent hotel owners while discouraging future tourism and tourism taxation and revenue on the margin. It's time to end the grandstanding and start thinking about solutions rather than framing interest group lobbying as some sort of pursuit of social justice. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Now, according to my records, this is the last person who has registered to speak. So at this moment, we are going to be taking a brief 5-minute pause to allow any members of the public who still wish to provide testimony and have not done so to complete our online registration process. I do want to remind everyone that if you have not registered to speak, if you're using the internet to join us, please remember to register online. You can find our internet instructions on how to register at www.nyc.gov/NYCENGAGE. The time is 3:48 p.m. and we're going to take a 5-minute pause. And now we will begin our 5-minute time tracker. Thank you and see you shortly. Good afternoon and welcome back. You are tuning in to the remote public scoping meeting for the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment. For the record, the seeker number for this proposal is 21 DCP 111Y. Once again, my name is Olga Abinator, and I am the director of the New York City Department of City Planning, Environmental Assessment and Review Division. We are currently on part 3 of today's public scoping meeting, where members of the public can speak for up to 3 minutes. I'll note that we do already have a 3-minute time tracker posted on our screen, and that we want to send a reminder to anyone who may have registered during our break that after the 3-minute mark has passed, we will move on to the next speaker. I'll ask for everyone's patience as we wait a moment to confirm whether or not we have any new registrants who wish to speak today, so that we make sure that all voices are heard today at this public scoping meeting. We thank everyone for your patience, and please give us a brief moment to confirm. All right, I am hearing from my colleagues over at the Department of City Planning that there are no speakers who have registered to provide testimony this afternoon. So at this point, we will be moving ahead with closing our public scoping meeting. Once again, to anyone who may have experienced technical difficulties and wish to provide public testimony today but wasn't able to do so, please recall that you may submit written testimony online by either selecting the Citywide Hotel Text Amendment public scoping meeting page on the www.nyc.gov/NYC Engage website, which is the NYC Engage portal, or through the Department of City Planning's webpage. I'll ask our production team to please move on to the next slide. Once again, written comments will be accepted by the Department of City Planning through Monday, February 1st, 2021. Comments may be emailed to 21DCP1111Y_DL@planning.nyc.gov, or comments may be mailed to the New York City Department of City Planning, Environmental Assessment and Review Division. Attention, Olga Abinator, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. The time is approximately 3:56 p.m. and today's public scoping meeting is now closed. I'd like to thank everyone who participated today and the members of the Department of City Planning and the consultant team for making today's meeting a possibility. Thank you and have a great rest of your afternoon.